I stayed on a farm till I was 16 years old. The reason we moved, the war came along. Dad started with a loud voice, and when he said something, you didn't walk, you ran to where he was. And we all converged upon him, and we had a little Philco radio. It had two knobs on it. One you turned it on, and one you did the volume with it. And just as we stepped in, we heard President Roosevelt say, Eleanor does not like war, and I do not like war, but we are in war. So that's where I found out about World War II. Shortly, all the people started going off to war. My dad came down and got a job at Brooklyn Air Force Base in 1942, and we moved down here in January 1942. That's why we came to Mobile. I went in at 18 years old, and after that I went to North Carolina and Camp Lejeune for 15 days of advanced training. They dropped us off way off in the swamps, and it was at midnight, and they gave us a Lensetic compass. We had to have our helmets on in the full combat gear. And we waded through mud, slush, and snakes and everything else, and one of my fellas, I was a squad leader, and I was supposed to take them out. My point was I was supposed to meet at the water tank, and it was about a mile or 2 miles through that swamp. And there's a fella named Barry. He was from New York City, and he got frightened of the water. He couldn't, so we had to go down maybe 100 yards and come back on the other side of the branch. And you know what? At midnight, you couldn't see the stars in the slush and water. And we were supposed to come back to where our point was to go across there to hit the water tank. We had it right on the water tank 2 miles down there. Coming back, we got in waist deep water and stuff, and we came off about 25 yards, which wasn't too bad. We saw two of our drill instructors over here. They had these hats on, standing straight, starched shirts, looking at us, And boy, they weren't happy about that. And when we got there, we got a little admonishment pretty severely about, said you couldn't do that in combat, said you get all the people killed. Well, see, he didn't give me a chance to explain. I couldn't defend myself, because it was my fault, really, even though it was his fault, because I was supposed to get them there. You don't make excuses. That kind of hurt her feelings a little bit, but my helmet got the missing too. Because see, you can't use your compass with any metal, and when I laid it down to do this and this other stuff happened, well, I said, well, I wasn't going to worry about that too much. But after we went through the advanced training, we got on what we called Old Smoky. We stayed on it 7 days. Then we boarded MVJ Boulenfontein, a Dutch rented ship. 3 days out, we went through a minefield. It looked like we were going to hit those spikes. And people, we were shooting them with a M1 rifles, 20 millimeters to 40 millimeters off the ship. But see, they weren't as close to the top. They looked like it's probably 4 or 5 feet. So whenever a bullet, something hits water, it diverts. And it's hard to hit anything on the water with a weapon, So, and we got through that without getting touched. And then we went on to Kwajalein and picked up some people there. Kwajalein, that island had already been secured. My brother-in-law was aboard a ship, Brandcroft, and he was there at Kwajalein. We picked up submarine alerts from there all the way. They followed us all the way to Saipan. Now that's something that's kind of scary too. I'm down in 4 AOL. That means you're down on double bottom, below the water line, and right in the center of the ship. We stayed on our submarine alert all the way to Saipan. Then we landed at Yeller Beach 5 on Saipan under an air raid. So that was another good welcome. We'd already had a little combat before we got to where we was going. and we disembarked. We stayed there the morning. We got there at about 8 o'clock at night, and they wouldn't let us go because the air raid had come off. And then we disembarked and went through. We got on our recons and went to Purple Beach 3 where the fighter jets were. We had to go through a cave, barely got the trucks through. Then we went over to a ravine and pitched tents and so forth, whatever we could sleep on. And the Japanese got to killing these. The reason we went there, they was cutting these 90 millimeters gun's throat, and we went over to this particular mission we was on to protect them. And after we got there and kind of got that secured, this fellow Ducharme was our demolition expert, so he went back and blew these caves we had to go through open, but he killed two of our own men doing it. One of them he cut the legs off, one of them he cut in two periods, and that kind of bothered us too, They wanted me. See, I knew if I was in with him 2 or 3 times, I wouldn't go on that mission with. I'm on that mission with him because I knew he was dangerous. But sure enough, he killed 2 or 3 people, and he was pretty. He made a major later on. He was nervy. In fact, he made all the pictures for the Hills of Iwo Jima, movie out there. Our demolition crew made that when we came back, and he was real good at ammunition. Then we went on into Saipan and stayed there for a few months and trained in the cane fields, and we went through and was wiping out what few Japs there was there. Wasn't too many. We got the last mop up. Then they put us on barges, and we went to Tinian. That's 4 miles from Saipan. And we got to see the Enola Gay that dropped the bomb, and there was some people working on it, and I saw them, but see, I didn't know who they were. Later on, we had eaten horse meat, red horse meat, and dehydrated eggs till our mouths were blistered. And I was going to go get me a good meal, and sure enough, they had steak there. First time I had a steak in 2 years. Our church, I started the program up, but I finished it and couldn't go to it because I got the flu. But what we did the first quilt of honor. That was the first time they have given it in a church. See, our sister ship got hit too, going to Okinawa after we finished Saipan. I was talking about our sister ship, AP A156, was next to our sister ship, AP A120. And I was in a DAV meeting with a fellow, and he said I was on that ship. I thought that was pretty unusual also. After the Saipan has really settled out, we got the word to board the same ship again, APA 156, and we went to Okinawa on it. Then, after we started on the way, then we didn't know where we were steaming to. We started getting into rough waters. I mean, sure enough, they got rough. And we got word that it broke the tachometers on the ship at 175 knots an hour. But it was actually, when you say 175 knots, it was actually about 185, something like that, miles. It broke the tachometer. Went through that, and that was terrible. It would go way up out of the water and vibrate, let the beams and crack, and it'd come down, slap the water again, and it'd list over about 30 degrees. You're supposed to get sunk, but that was a brand new ship. We was on a good ship. We were in what we call a shore party battalion. It's kind of hard to explain. We were split up in teams. I was at Team 7, Company C, 1st Platoon, Team 7. I'll give you a couple of instances now. Some would go, like where the LCMs were going to bring the first load down, first troops and land them, but they'd blow up all the obstacles in the water so the barges could come up. And some of us might do something else. We had a whole raft of things we would do. But we would go out before the first troops come back. Then when they come in, we would go back and join them. But at Okinawa, what we used my outfit for, we got into a convoy of about 3 or 4 dozen of those LCMs. And just as soon as we got away from our sister ship, these Baker bombs started coming over. You know what you've read them Japanese Baker bombs. They got a propeller on them, and there's just one time shot and no recovery. Don't come back. They seemed like they're about 4 inches up. Then we saw 3,000 ships there. They were all firing. All the guns on the beach was firing. And of course the submarines, I guess they come up. Everything was firing at everything, and it was terrible. And of course, our battle wagons, they were off 20 miles, and they could hit the beaches from 20 miles away. Then they'd have a blast with that, So all of it together, it was like Armageddon. I guarantee you. We pulled them up to the middle of the island, and the 5th Marines landed on the Yellow Beach 5, I believe it was, and the 10th Army. General Buckner, now that's the first time I've ever seen this happen in World War II. He was in charge of the whole operation. He directed everything through there, and then we found out later on that he was on an outpost looking down at the 8th Marines, wiping out a whole ravine down there that had just all. I mean, it was real loaded with combat Japanese, and with everybody he was just trying to clean that whole alley up. So he stood there about 5 minutes, and he made a statement to his two other officers. Said, "Well, this looks like it's going real good here. I'm going to move to another battle station." And by the time he said that, 5 mortar shells come in and hit right under their feet. There was 3. He and 2 other officers, and Frank Rogers. He was a combat photographer. He's the one that took the pictures here, and General Buckley, he fell to the ground, and he got killed. And one of the other officers got wounded a little bit, but it knocked Frank Rogers back 20 feet. And evidently somebody, the Japanese located, they figured out it was an outpost, and they threw the mortar shells at him. So then it went on, and the 8th Marines and took that and come out after it went through the whole thing, and they were cleaning out that bay, that strip of land, and they got to that, and of course that was the end of the war then.